Hello there, people of the internet. Things are getting crazy in the world right now, and I decided to go ahead and go through the inventory that I have here at this particular filming location and kind of take stock at what I have here. The things I brought here, I brought specifically for filming purposes, so they're not exactly my ideal go-to items in the event that something does kick off here in the U.S. With everything that's going on in the world and the open borders that we have here in the U.S., who knows what sort of enemies we have here? Who knows what sort of sleeper cells are here? Who knows what we might, eventually face? There's areas along the coastlines that have decided to completely disarm themselves. I mean, there's no telling what's going to show up in the future. So I was just thinking to myself, hypothetically, if something does happen and we find ourselves in a legitimate situation where we would need to protect ourselves, I was going through the things I brought for recording purposes, and I was thinking what would be the best options for what it is that I have going on here. And I think that I have the best options available out of the things that I have. I think I've come up with a really, really good idea and solution. So, myself, I think that my choice would be pretty clear. I have this. This is my only AR. This is a PSA KP15 lower with a PSA upper on it. This is obviously a retro M16 style build. Not ideal, but I have this one single 20 round magazine, and I have 4 other standard capacity magazines, and they have 77 grain projectiles inside of them, which are going to be absolutely excellent for the preservation of life. Then for recording purposes, I have some cheap steel case tool ammo. So I got a grand total of 5 mags and a few hundred rounds of ammunition. So this right here, I'm not sure how much of this I'll have because I continue to use this stuff for recording purposes on my YouTube channel. If you like discussions like this, then subscribe to the channel because there's a lot of you that are not subscribed. Like 95% of you are not subscribing. I'm trying to get those subscription counts up. So I think that going with the M16 would probably be my best option because it's the only AR platform that I have at this location that I'm currently at. So on top of that, I was debating on what sort of sidearms to bring with me. I definitely recommend that you have a primary firearm and a sidearm just in case your primary goes down, or just in case, I don't know, something happens, you lean your rifle against a tree and you end up having to defend yourself. Your secondary firearm you can keep on your hip, on your person at all times, so you are always consistently armed. So like I said, I recommend everybody has their primary and their sidearm. So I was debating on what to do for a sidearm, and out of what I have here, well, the couple of caveats with this one. I decided to go ahead and go with my Taurus G2C in 9mm. This is a really good option. I think it's got like a 12 round capacity or something like that. Yeah, 12 round capacity, and I got about 200-ish rounds of 9mm. I got these boxes right here, and then I got like some miscellaneous 9mm laying around, and this is what I brought for recording purposes, but they're what I currently have on hand. But then I was debating on what it is I would pick because I have other kinds of ammunition as well, and on top of that, at this location, I have other people that would rely on me to be able to provide them with certain defensive capabilities in the event that something happens. So one of them is going to be a 120-pound girl who's standing about 5.5 feet tall, not very large, not very firearms oriented. So with her, I was debating on what it is that I would give her to be able to assist with defense. I certainly hope it doesn't come to that, but in the event that it does, then I'd like to have her be able to defend herself in the event that I find myself in a situation where I cannot do it. And I decided that out of all the things I have here, this high point 9mm carbine would probably be the best option. Semi-automatic, the sights on it are very easy to use, 10 round magazines, not exactly ideal, But boy, this is a hell of a lot better than the nothing that she would most likely end up using. So this right here is likely what I would end up giving to her. I was debating on other options, but she's small and very recoil and noise sensitive. And if in the event that something is happening, you definitely need to make hits on target. It's not just a matter of sending lead down range. You need to make hits on target to stop that threat. So I think that the 9mm carbine concept is probably going to be ideal for her. She will not be able to really touch out beyond distances that are, beyond the capabilities of that 9mm. Now, with that being said, I've only got like 200 rounds and some change of 9mm. So I would probably want to reserve that 9mm ammunition for the carbine, and just for logistical simplicity, I would likely let her use the Taurus G2C as a sidearm. And that would probably be the setup that I would give to her. And now we have 200 rounds of 9mm that are dedicated to that particular platform. So you got the carbine and the handgun, each loaded with the same type of ammunition. Very logistically simple to provide for that. Now, that being said, I have my primary, but now I've given up my secondary firearm. So I was debating on what to use next. This is something that I use as a car gun. This is a Smith & Wesson SW40 VE. You guys have seen this on the channel before. I've shot this on the channel before. I mean, I've shown this one off a good number of times. It's been reliable. It's been accurate. The trigger on it kind of sucks, but I've done some work on the trigger to make it significantly better. It's essentially a Glock clone. That's what it is. But it's a 40 Smith & Wesson, and it holds 14 rounds of ammunition. And I only say that I'll end up using this because on top of the 9mm, I've got probably about 200 or so rounds of 40 Smith & Wesson, and then I've got multiple magazines for both of these handguns, so that tells me that these right here would probably be the ideal way to go whenever it comes to his and her loadouts. So I would have the 223 rifle and my couple magazines and rounds of 223. And I would have the 40 Smith & Wesson. A little, it's not great for logistical purposes. I would like to also have a 9mm semi-automatic handgun, but I just don't have one here besides this right here, or at least not one that I would consider to be viable for defensive purposes in an end-of-the-world situation. Now, even if I did have a 9mm semi-automatic handgun, that would require splitting up the ammunition that is already owned and not utilizing already owned ammunition, which is the 40 Smith & Wesson, which is why I figured 40 Smith & Wesson would probably be the ideal way to go. So my loadout, M16, 40 Smith & Wesson, and then hers, 9mm carbine, 9mm handgun. I think that's probably going to be the best option. Now, that being said, there's also an older gentleman that I do believe would end up coming to me for assistance if something were to go down, and I was debating on what I would give to him with the things that I have. And looking at what I have, and judging from his firearms training, he does have some, and I think that he could pick up on the concept pretty gosh darn easily. I have this SKS right here, self-loading 7.62 by 39. Not exactly ideal for fighting in the cities, but boy, this is a hell of a lot better than nothing. And I don't have any SKS stripper clips, but I do have this bag of 7.62 by 39 that I brought for filming and recording purposes. So this is like 100 rounds or so. That's a hell of a lot better than having absolutely nothing. So I would likely let the elderly gentleman use the SKS. And I'm sure that he would provide himself his own handgun, because I think that he has multiple of them. But in the event that he did not have the means to provide himself with his own handgun, I have a 1911, a Rock Island Armory 1911, and one single 50-round box of 45 ACP. And that is likely what I would let that man use. I've only gotten one magazine for my 1911 at this location, but that is a hell of a lot better than having no sidearm whatsoever. The 1911 is heavy. It only holds, this particular model only holds 7 rounds of ammunition because it's got a flush fit magazine, and it's not an ideal setup by any stretch of the imagination. But boy, is that not a bad setup at all. If somebody handed me an SKS and a 1911 and ammunition to go with both of them, I would definitely feel a hell of a lot better than just, knowing that I'm going to rely on my harsh words. Now, there is one other person that I am half expecting to show up. Not positive on it, but maybe. It still might happen. And I actually believe that he is somebody who has firearms training, formally. I think he's ex-law enforcement, if memory serves me right. He might even be ex-military. I'm not entirely sure what his background story is, because I don't necessarily know him all that well, but he knows what I do, and he is the family of family friends that would likely be showing up, and I'm willing to bet that he would probably show up. And while he does not have anything, or at least not that I know of, I thought that I had my thing in here. Let me go grab that real quick. I'll be right back. Alright, since I no longer have any other self-loading firearms I'd be able to give out, I would likely let this particular gentleman use the Ishapore 2A1, chambered in 7.62 NATO. I've only got one magazine for this, but I do have some stripper clips for the 7.62 NATO rifle, and those will work just fine in this 10-round magazine. It's a very fast action. I think that he would be able to utilize it well. I've got probably, 50 rounds or so of 7.62 NATO in this thing, so yeah, that's a hell of a lot better than not utilizing anything. Now, as far as the next handgun goes, I'm kind of really scraping the bottom of the barrel whenever it comes to handguns and ammunition supply. But what I do have is this bandolier of 38 Special, a bunch of different rounds of 38 Special. And I've got an 1872 Colt open top. And although that's not the most ideal handgun for modern situations, that's going to be a hell of a lot better than being completely disarmed. So 38 Special and an 1872 open top, that right there will be the best option, because the 9mm, the 40 Smith & Wesson, and the 45 ACP have already been accounted for, and all I have left is 38 Special, or at least practically speaking. So I would give that gentleman the old Ishapore and the old 38, and that would be his loadout. Definitely not ideal by any stretch of the imagination, but that would be, that's just going to have to be what he decide, or what I'm going to decide to let him rock with, because, he shows up with nothing, and I've got to stretch out the resources. Now, if anybody else shows up to start, looking to do something, and they need a means of defense and whatnot, at that point, I'm really scraping the bottom of the barrel whenever it comes to modern firearms. So I'd have to start giving out Mausers. I got a few hundred rounds for my Mausers that I have here. And then I got a couple of these steel case rounds of 7.62 by 54 rimmed for the Mosins, and at that point, I'm just giving people bolt-action rifles, because that's just going to be better than having absolutely nothing at all. I don't have stripper clips for these. Actually, I think I do have a few Mauser stripper clips, and maybe I have one or two Mosin stripper clips, thanks to the person who sent me that ammunition. But not like that would really matter. If I'm handing you a bolt-action rifle for defensive purposes in modern day, then we are really scraping the bottom of the barrel. Okay, alright. I think out of everything that I have here, now bear in mind that this right here, although it could be useful in the event that something happens, odds are things aren't going to happen. And I basically just went through this scenario for fun, and that's what this video is about. Just me entertaining myself and looking at the things that I have. I know that I've got this 8mm Lebel, and I've got 4 shots of 8 Lebel for it. So, that's going to be better than nothing. I got the Swiss K31 and 7 rounds of 7.5 Swiss that I'm going to be using in videos and whatnot. So that ammunition will probably not last much longer. I got little odds and ends things, a lot of which the ammunition is very, very few rounds available. This 8890 in 8x50, I got a couple of hand loads for it, but that's about it. None of these are going to be ideal, besides like the automatics. I do have the Henry Takedown 22 long rifle. That would probably be something that I would give out to somebody who would rely on like foraging. They wouldn't be for defense, they'd be for game gathering and whatnot. And then I've got a 12 gauge shotgun. I've got a Norinco Remington 870 clone and a couple 12 gauge shells for it. I mean, whenever I brought the 12 gauge down here, that's for defensive purposes, and I didn't bring a whole lot of ammunition to spare for it because it's just for defensive purposes. But I do have a couple of rounds for that thing as well, so that would be something that I would probably hand out as well to somebody in the event that needs it. But I think I've got all my primary bases covered. I've got myself, I've got herself. Those are the two main ones. And then I've got the elderly gentleman, 99.9% sure that he's going to end up showing up. I think after that I have the family friends and take care of them with that Ishapore right there. Definitely a hell of a lot better than nothing. I think I've covered my bases pretty well. If anything else ends up showing up, they're probably just going to get a bolt-action rifle of some kind with a couple of rounds. So, that's my 2 cents on the subject. Thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below. There's a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day. I'll see you guys in the next episode.
Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. The poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.